Well, in order to show you some of the ways to organize this main window, I actually want to take a look at pictures. So I'm going to click Pictures on the left side. It might be My Pictures if you're using a prior version. And then I'm going to double-click the folder. What we get to see here are some fairly nice thumbnails, or miniatures if you will, of pictures that are in this folder. But the reason I open this folder is to show you that there are many different ways that we can view things using the computer window. From the upper right-hand side, you have a couple of different buttons. The first one is your View option. I can go to the top to extra large icons, great for pictures because now I can see a lot of details. I can look at large icons, medium icons, all the way down to small icons. Now you can see that when I get to small icons, those are actually so small that they go to a generic picture, just telling me that it's a picture, but I can't really see the image. So any of the ones above this are going to give me an actual preview of what the actual picture looks like. That can be helpful because, as I say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So if I have many things called the same thing or very similar to the same thing, I can actually pick the picture that I want. Now those are very visual and they're great for graphic things like pictures. But we also have some that are better for kind of data files. One is a list. A list is just what it sounds like. It's simply a list and it tells me the names of the files. That's pretty basic. But I can see a lot of things on the screen at one time. One of my favorites is the Details view because this actually shows me some good information. In addition to the name of the file, because this is a picture, it tells me the date and time it was taken, if any tags have been added to it, the actual size, and it allows me to give ratings to my pictures, so I can rate them as 1 to 5 stars. As kind of a digital picture junkie, this does me a lot of good, because not only can I see all of my pictures when it was taken, I also can tell the size, and for me, I often take many shots of the same picture, so I can look for the one that I rated 5 stars instead of the one that I rated 3, 2, or 1. As we saw with our disk drive, we actually can look at some details about these images as well. For example, if I click on the one at the very top called Chrysanthemum, and then look at the bottom of the window, I can see, again, more details. The name, the date it was taken, the rating, but I also can see the type of image that it is, the tags, and its dimensions, 1024 by 768. So as a photographer, and as a person who works a lot with graphics, this can give me a lot of information. This, though, is still limited information. And anytime you're looking at a folder or a file, in addition to these kind of quick insights, you can always right-click. And at the bottom of the menu, you can choose Properties. This will bring up a detailed property box. A lot more information than I got to see before. It tells me things like the location, how much size it's taking on the disk, even details like when it was created, modified, and accessed, all of which could be 3 different dates. At the top, depending on the type of file, it will also show me security systems for this particular file, details about the file that I can add in, like a title, a subject, and those tags and comments that we've been talking about. And the last couple of versions of Windows also allow me to keep previous versions. Now we go over this more in the actual Windows 7 course, but in short, this means that if I open and edit this picture, it actually makes kind of an instant backup. So if I decide I messed it up or I don't want that version, I can come into the properties and I can choose to go back to a prior version. It's kind of a fail-safe feature and it's really wonderful, and a lot of people just don't know that it's there. All of these details are available by opening up the properties. And remember that properties are available for drives, folders, and individual files. I'll go ahead and close that out. And let's finish up taking a look at our views. We've been through all of the visual ones at the top, list and details. We have just a couple of more. One that's called a tile is kind of nice. It does kind of a combination of a little bit of detail along with a thumbnail. And then one of the new versions for Windows 7 is something called Content. And this isn't very appropriate for pictures that we're looking at here, but this again shows the content of files, not just some of the details. Since these are pictures, I'm going to go ahead and put this back to, I'm thinking, large icons. The second thing that we have on the right-hand side is the ability to turn on and off a preview pane. Just a reminder, but I'm using Windows 7. If you're using another operating system, or even just because your computer is different than mine, like a Dell versus an HP or some other manufacturer, your exact options on menus and the buttons that you see may vary. I'm going to turn this on, and it's going to add an actual third column where I can see a larger version of my file. Now, since I chose to view it as a large icon, I'm not sure that this is terribly useful. But let's change our view. Let's say that I want to see the details of my files. Remember that with details, I don't get a thumbnail. But when I click on the file, I now can see not only the details in the regular pane, but I can see an actual preview of the picture in the preview pane. And the preview pane is simply a toggle. It's either on or off, so if you want to turn it off, you can click on the button. Depending on the type of files that you have in a particular folder, you will see any variety of options in a toolbar running across the top of the window. Often with Windows 7, it's about sharing things, so I can share it, I can look at a slideshow, I can print, which we've looked at, I can even send this immediately via email or burn it to a CD. We'll use the new folder option in just a second. But for now, I'd like to go all the way to the left and show you this Organize button. You probably haven't noticed because this is a computer fundamentals course and you didn't know to notice it, but when I select a file, if I click on it one time, it selects it, and to open it, I have to double click. That actually is kind of old-fashioned technology, and I want to go ahead and change that to something called single click access. I do that by going to the Organize button. Now you only have to do this once for the entire computer. You don't have to do it for each folder. From Organize, if I move about 3/4 of the way down, I can choose Folder and Search options. And there's actually a lot of things available in here. One of which is when we go to a folder, for example, when we're drilling down from libraries to pictures to sample pictures, do we want to open that folder in the same window or open individual windows? Opening individual windows is really kind of old-fashioned. We haven't done that for several versions, but if you like to keep things in separate windows, you certainly can by choosing the second option. The one that I like is down below, where it says, I want to single-click to open an item. That means if I simply pause my mouse over it, I'm going to select it by pointing to it. Now I have a couple of options. I can underline all of them, like a browser would have hyperlinks, or I can only underline it when I point at them. I like that second option. Remember, what we're turning off is we no longer double-click to open. Instead, we're going to single-click to open. There are also some options for the navigation pane. In other words, do you want to see all of your folders all of the time, and do you automatically want to expand to the current folder? You can kind of play with a couple of different settings here. Likewise, there's a View tab, and we're not going to go through all of these, but I did want to show you one particular setting. This is how things are viewed in these particular windows. For example, you can never show thumbnails. Now the reason for that is when we generate thumbnails for these pictures, that takes up computer memory and it also can take some time. So you can say, I never want to see that. I just want to see those generic icons next to it. We can see display the full path in the bar. That would get rid of the breadcrumbs. And if I come down a little bit further, I can say hide extensions for known file types. When we talk about file naming, and I said you need to know what kind of file it is, like .doc for a Microsoft Word document, .rtf for rich text, or .txt, by default in Windows, if Windows recognizes the file, it doesn't show it. It just shows the file as sample file I saved. You can turn that off, and that way you will see the file extensions. It's just a checkbox. So if you find that to be a little irritating, you can do that. Now again, there's many different things that we can see here, including the ability to turn off showing your drive letters. So if I only wanted to see Windows 7 hard drive and not Windows 7 hard drive C, I can actually choose to not show that. All right, with that said, remember the main thing that I changed is single-click access. I'm going to say OK. And now I want you to notice that when I pause over any one of my files, it now looks like a hyperlink, and it gets the little linking finger. By simply pausing over it, I select it. I'm not actually clicking. And if I actually click on it, it will open the file. I like this because to me this is faster. All I have to do is move my mouse to select, click once to open, instead of clicking once to select it and then double-clicking to open. It's simply a matter of pure preference, but this is kind of the most recent and up-to-date way of working with your files. All right, well, we've had a little bit of fun. Now it's time to get back to work. I'm going to click on Documents on the left-hand side. If you're in another type of operating system, you can go to My Documents. And I want to show you how to create some folders. One way is to simply click the New Folder button. Or I can right-click on a blank space, choose New Folder. Remember that when you create a new folder, it will be created as a folder within whatever folder you currently are. So when I create a new folder, it's going to be a folder within Documents. When I click that button, a little icon shows up, and the default name is New Folder. We never want to leave it called New Folder. We always want to give it a meaningful name. And I'm going to go ahead and give this one a meaningful name called New Things. I can simply type that in and press Enter when I'm done. That's all there is to it. You just created a new folder, or the older terminology, a new directory within your documents. Well, now what can we do with this? Well, maybe I thought I wanted to call it New Things, but then I changed my mind, and I actually want to call it My Stuff. If I right-click a folder, I see Options. Down near the bottom, one of the options that I can do is I can rename the folder. I'm going to go ahead and choose Rename, and I'm going to change New Things to My Stuff. I simply type the new name and press Enter, just like I did when I first created it. Now, you need to be careful, because if you're used to doing double-click to open stuff, remember that we changed this to single-click. So that means we have to do something a little bit differently. When I have double-click to open, I would click, pause, and click a second time to get it into edit mode. Or I could right-click and choose Rename. When I have single-click to open, if I click on this, it's going to actually open the folder, which is not what I want. So with single-click to open, you have to right-click in order to rename the folder. Now I'm going to create a folder within My Stuff, and I'm going to call that Training Files. Remember, I have to already be in the folder, so I'm going to click once to open My Stuff. It's empty because it's brand new, and I could click on the button in order to create a new folder, or I can right-click on a blank space. I can choose New, and all of these things are things I can create, but from the very top of the list, I can create Folder. Like I did before, I then just have to type and press Enter to save it. I think you get the idea. This is really all you have to know to work with and to create your own file structure. Knowing how to use either Computer or Windows Explorer, which now is both the same thing, but it's going to be different on earlier operating systems, the concepts are still the same. You can navigate by drilling down, by double-clicking icons, or by using the navigation pane in the newer versions, or by using Windows Explorer in the older versions. You can move backwards and forwards by going into deeper levels or going back up and out. In the later versions, you can actually use breadcrumbs or the file path to do so. When you're looking at folders, files, and drives, they all have properties, and you can either see those by selecting them, by hovering over them and getting a tooltip, or by right-clicking and choosing Properties. You can change the views that you're seeing things, which will give you more or less details, including previews of things like multimedia and pictures. And lastly, we can create folders and subfolders by either clicking on the Folders button or by right-clicking a blank space and saying New Folder. Now you have the tools that you need in order to organize yourself so you can find the things that you need on your computer.